Hatutaki. Waambie hatutaki. Samia, hatukutaki. Hatukutaki Samia.
Listen, before we go into the chaos, the hashtags, and the tear gas, let's take a breath and just look at what's really going on. Tanzania, usually so quiet, so steady, suddenly feels like it's standing on a fault line. You can hear the tension humming through the streets of Dar es Salaam like the air just before a storm. The youth, they're not whispering anymore. They're shouting. They're marching. They're refusing to accept another election that smells like deja vu. And, it's not just anger this time. It's exhaustion mixed with clarity. They're done being told to wait. Kenya's youth are watching too. Some joining online, some crossing borders, all feeling that same ache, that same rhythm. So listen closely, because this isn't just about Tanzania. It's about what happens when Africa's youngest generation finally decides to stand up and speak. Let's get started. Imagine this. It's October 2025 and Tanzania is holding another national election. The sun rises over Dar es Salaam, that same hazy light, that same routine of campaign jingles echoing through megaphones, posters plastered on every wall, smiles that don't reach the eyes. It feels familiar, too familiar. People have seen this movie before, and they already know how it ends. The ruling party, CCM, enters the race with all the machinery in its favor: media, money, and military. Opposition voices are loud online but quiet on air. And as votes are counted, the rhythm feels off. By midnight, whispers start spreading. They've done it again. The announcement comes. The ruling party wins by a landslide. But this time, the silence that usually follows doesn't come. Instead, something else does. A tremor. Soft at first, then roaring. By dawn, Dar es Salaam isn't waking up. It's erupting. Crowds fill the streets, mostly young people. No one's waiting for permission. Some carry placards made from ripped cardboard boxes. We voted. You cheated others, just carry their voices. And trust me, that's louder than any slogan. You can feel it, that electric, dangerous hope when a generation finally realizes it has nothing left to lose. At first, it's scattered. Students outside campuses, vendors pausing their work, boda riders honking in unison. But by noon, the protests had taken shape. They move like a pulse through the city, fast, unpredictable, alive. And when Dar moves, the rest of the country follows. Arusha lights up next. Dodoma joins in, Mbeya, Mwanza, each one becoming a verse in this growing national chorus. It's not just anger, it's rhythm. A rhythm built on years of watching opportunities vanish, of seeing the same leaders talk about development while young people are stuck in traffic, not progress. And what's striking is how calm the youth seem amid the chaos. They're not reckless, they're strategic. They're using encrypted chats, signal groups, code words. When rumors spread of police approaching, someone texts rain coming. When a safe zone opens, they text clear skies. But the state is watching too, and it's not amused. Police trucks roll out. Armed men appear at corners. Then come the canisters, clouds of tear gas swallowing entire streets. People cough, stumble, but don't scatter. They wrap their faces in t-shirts, raise their fists higher, and keep chanting. Then, boom, the internet dies. Just like that. The screens go black. WhatsApp freezes. X, Instagram, Facebook, all gone. It's like the world goes silent mid-sentence. And for a moment you think, maybe this is it. Maybe it's over. But no, it's only beginning. Because you see, when you cut off the connection, people find new ways to connect. Word of mouth replaces hashtags. Old FM radios buzz back to life. Flyers appear overnight, handwritten, passed hand to hand like forbidden letters. It's almost poetic, how the very tool meant to control them becomes the reason they adapt. And the government, panicking, starts calling for calm. But it's too late. The streets have already made their decision. The youth have already learned that fear only works if you believe it. A young protester in Dodoma said something that stuck with me. He shouted through a haze of smoke, We don't hate our country, we just want to recognize it again. That line, that's what this whole movement is about. It's not rebellion for rebellion's sake, it's reclamation. And yet, even as the smoke clears, there's this lingering question. The one no one dares to say out loud, but everyone feels in their bones. Who are these fearless young people, defying curfews, ignoring fear, standing against power as if they were born for this moment? You've got to understand something before we go any further. These aren't just protesters. They're not troublemakers, like the government wants you to believe. These are kids, yeah. Kids who grew up watching their parents struggle through promises that never came true. They were born hearing about independence, but they've never actually felt free. They call them Gen Z, the TikTok generation, the ones glued to their phones. But you know what? Those same phones are their megaphones now. Their shields, their proof, their lifelines. When people say they're lazy or lost, it's laughable. Because lazy people don't march through tear gas with bare chests and burning eyes. Lazy people don't risk arrest just to tell the truth. You see, this generation is something the system wasn't built to handle. Unfiltered, unafraid, and uncontrollable. They don't organize like old political movements with leaders and speeches. Nah, they move like a pulse, quick, silent collective. You shut down one account, 10 others appear. You ban one rally, they turn a music concert into a protest. And the creativity? It's wild. They use memes to mock politicians. They remix government slogans into satire. One viral video showed a protester standing in front of an armored truck, blasting Burna Boy's Common Person. The crowd behind him dancing, crying, laughing all at once. It's resistance and celebration at the same time. That's how Gen Z fights. They fight with rhythm, with style, with irony. Because when truth becomes dangerous, humor becomes a weapon. But here's the thing, they're not just angry, they're informed. They talk about civic rights, data privacy, and constitutional limits. Imagine that, teenagers debating the law better than the people enforcing it. The system doesn't know what to do with that kind of awareness. It can't bribe it, can't intimidate it, can't outsmart it, and that's what scares them. When the curfews hit, young people found ways around them. They'd host sleepovers that were really organizing meetings. When the internet went dark, they turned to old-school walkie-talkies and radios. When police blocked the main roads, they used alleyways and markets. Every crackdown became a classroom. Every raid became a rally. And you know what? There's something deeply poetic about that. Because this generation has turned survival into a strategy. Their parents used to whisper politics over dinner. These kids shouted into microphones. Their parents used to fear soldiers. These kids look them in the eye and say, "You work for us." You can almost feel it, the psychological shift. This is the generation that's tired of watching corruption being normalized. They've seen leaders travel abroad to beg for loans while local schools collapse. They've seen ministries buy SUVs while hospitals run out of medicine. They've seen elections rigged, constitutions rewritten, justice auctioned, and they've said, not anymore. And what makes this moment even more powerful is that it's not just about Tanzania. No, it's about the African youth finally realizing they share the same fight, the same exhaustion, the same hunger for accountability. Still, let's not pretend it's easy. Every protest has a price. Arrests are rising. Fear is real. And some nights, silence feels safer than speaking. But even then, they whisper the same thing to each other. If not us, then who? The truth is, these young people don't hate their government. They just hate being treated like spectators in their own country. And maybe, that's why this movement feels different. Because it's not about revenge, it's about respect. But you have to ask yourself something. When a generation that grew up under democracy starts protesting for democracy, doesn't that say everything about how broken the system has become? And that leads us to the next big question. How does power react when it realizes fear doesn't work anymore? You know, it's strange. Every time an African government faces a wave of protests, it's like watching a bad play being performed for the 1,000th time. Same script, same lines, same empty promises. You can almost predict it word for word. The first line, foreign interference. That's the classic. They say, these protests are being fueled by outsiders. as if Tanzanian youth needed anyone to teach them how to be angry, as if the hunger, the joblessness, the hopelessness were imported problems. Then comes line 2. These are criminals disrupting peace. Peace, huh? The kind of peace where people suffer quietly? The kind that looks calm because everyone's too afraid to speak? And the final act? The government appears on TV with calm music in the background, promising dialogue and unity. It's an old, tired performance. But this time, the audience isn't clapping. Because here's what happened. When the government tried to spin its story, the youth had already told theirs. And theirs was louder. State TV showed images of normal life. People are smiling, going to work. But at the same time, videos leaked online showed the real picture. Smoke, screams, soldiers patrolling neighborhoods. Even after the internet shut down, footage still found its way out through USBs, cloud uploads, and encrypted messages. It's like truth itself refused to die, and the authorities couldn't stand that. They tried arresting journalists. They stormed newsrooms. They called independent reporters agents of chaos. But what they didn't understand, what they still don't understand, is that the era of controlling information is over. You can silence a newspaper, but you can't silence 10,000 phones. There's this one clip that went viral before the blackout. A journalist in Dar es Salaam shouted live on air, "They can cut the internet, but they can't cut our eyes." That line hit like lightning. It spread everywhere, whispered in protests, printed on banners, and posted on walls. It was the line that summarized everything. This wasn't just about politics. It was about perception. The battle wasn't just for power. It was for the truth itself. And, you know what's ironic? The government that once boasted about its digital progress, its e-governance, its modern economy, ended up fighting its own people by shutting down the very thing that connected them, the internet. That's how backward it got. In trying to control the narrative, they exposed themselves. They didn't realize that fear doesn't work when people have already lost everything worth fearing for. When you've lived through unemployment, hunger, police brutality, and silence, what's left to lose? One young woman in Arusha said during a live interview before the networks went dark, "We don't fear the government anymore because they don't fear God." That line, that one stuck with me. Because it wasn't just rebellion, it was moral authority. And here's where things started to crack. The more the government doubled down, the more it lost legitimacy. The youth weren't just seen as rebels anymore. They were seen as truth tellers. Even older generations, once loyal to the system, began whispering, "Maybe the kids are right." You see, that's the danger of overplaying control. At some point, it backfires. When people stop believing the official story, power begins to rot from the inside out. By now, Tanzania's leadership could feel that quiet panic behind closed doors. They'd won the election on paper, but they were losing the country in spirit. But what happens when the echo of rebellion refuses to stay within borders? When it spills into neighboring lands, inspiring those who've been watching silently? Because that's exactly what happened next. The noise from Tanzania didn't fade. It traveled. Across the border, across the airwaves, across the hearts of those who saw themselves reflected in that struggle. And the first to answer that echo? Kenya. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. You know, something powerful happens when pain becomes contagious, not in a bad way, but in a way that reminds people they're connected. That's what happened when Tanzania's cry crossed its borders and reached Kenya. It didn't need a passport. It just traveled through empathy. When the videos of Tanzanian youth being chased through smoke-filled streets hit the internet before the blackout, Kenyan youth felt something stir inside them. They'd seen this before. The tear gas looked the same. The uniforms looked the same. Even the excuses from politicians sounded identical. It was like deja vu, but louder this time. In Nairobi, you could hear murmurs, "Have you seen what's happening in Dar?" Students on campus started streaming whatever clips they could find. Activists began writing open letters. Hashtags started trending. And, you could feel it. The solidarity wasn't manufactured. It was organic, pulsing straight from frustration and brotherhood. See, Kenya has its own battle scars. Just a few months earlier, its Gen Z had flooded the streets protesting the government's oppressive tax hikes. They faced the same tear gas, the same riot police, the same dismissive tone from politicians calling them misguided. And suddenly, across the border, Tanzania's youth were going through the same pain. One Kenyan activist said online, "When Tanzania breathes, we inhale the same air." That line caught fire. It was poetic and raw. People started repeating it like a prayer. Border towns like Namanga became gathering points. Young Kenyans and Tanzanians met there not for politics but for humanity. They shared food, masks, and updates. Some brought first aid kits. Some just came to listen. One Kenyan medic told the press, "We're not crossing lines, we're crossing hearts." And listen, governments hate that. They hate when empathy starts feeling like a movement. Because once people realize their struggles are shared, division stops working. Kenyan authorities began warning their own youth to stay out of foreign affairs. But by then, it wasn't foreign anymore. The Kenyan streets were buzzing with conversations about democracy, police brutality, and generational betrayal. Tanzanian and Kenyan youths were live streaming together, finishing each other's sentences across languages and accents. The digital space became a shared home. No borders, no flags, just collective outrage and collective courage. But there's something deeper here, something historic. This moment between Tanzania and Kenya felt like a glimpse of the East Africa that the founders once dreamed of. Connected, conscious, and ready to act as one. Back in the 1960s, Julius Nyerere and Jomo Kenyatta talked about Pan-African unity. They wanted an East Africa that moved as one people, one economy, one soul. But over time, that dream was buried under bureaucracy, borders, and politics. Now, strangely enough, it's being revived not by presidents, but by protesters. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The unity that diplomacy failed to create, the youth are building in the streets. Still, there's a tension. Kenyan solidarity gives Tanzania's movement oxygen, but it also alarms those in power. Governments start talking about foreign infiltration. Intelligence agencies tighten surveillance. Cross-border WhatsApp groups are monitored. But how do you police empathy? How do you arrest inspiration? Because every time Kenyan youth post about Tanzania, it reminds their own leaders that their people are watching, learning, waiting. And it's not just online solidarity anymore. It's psychological empowerment. Tanzanian courage gave Kenyan youth a mirror, a reflection that said, "You're not crazy for wanting better." And, that's the beauty of what's happening right now. Africa's youth aren't just protesting, they're sinking. They're realizing that their countries may have different flags, but the same frustrations. Still, this growing connection created a new kind of threat for those in power, one that couldn't be arrested, silenced, or bribed. So what do you do when protests become ideas? And ideas start spreading faster than fear. You try to kill the connection itself, and that's exactly what came next. The battle not for land, not for power, but for information. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. When truth becomes too powerful to control, the first thing any government does is simple. It pulls the plug. And that's exactly what happened in Tanzania. One moment, live streams were rolling. Hashtags were trending. The world was watching. And then, silence. Click. The entire country went dark. No WhatsApp, no Twitter, no Instagram, no calls connecting across borders. Just a strange, heavy silence like someone had turned off the heartbeat of a nation. At first, people panicked. Businesses froze. Families couldn't reach loved ones. But then, something beautiful happened. Adaptation. You see, the government thought the internet was the revolution, but it wasn't. The people were. Even without signal bars, the protests lived on. It's almost poetic. The very act meant to suffocate the movement ended up feeding it. Because when you shut down the internet, you make every person a messenger. When you silence one voice, 10 others start whispering louder. Tanzanian youth began moving information the old-school way. Through word of mouth, through radio, through USB drives passed in cafes. Diaspora networks abroad picked up where the locals left off. Tanzanians in Canada, the UK, and South Africa started posting updates, sharing clips, and translating testimonies. It became a digital relay, one that no government firewall could stop. Meanwhile, independent outlets like the Chanzo and Ujasusi were working overtime to verify what little data could still escape. They weren't just reporting news, they were documenting history. And, the way they did it, it was brave. Journalists were working in shadows, hiding their equipment, sneaking into safe houses, publishing through offshore servers, just to tell the world what was really happening. But while they were fighting for truth, the government launched its own counteroffensive, a wave of propaganda. State TV began showing smiling citizens, clean streets, and calm neighborhoods. Anchors said the situation was under control. They claimed the footage online was foreign misinformation. Then came the bots, thousands of fake accounts flooding social media to rewrite the story. They posted old videos, edited photos, fake casualty numbers, and anything to confuse people. And yet somehow, the truth kept leaking through the cracks. Because no matter how many lies you post, you can't erase pain from people's eyes. And Tanzanians had seen too much. One protester from Mbeya said in a secret interview, "They can't erase what we felt." That line stuck. Because that's it, the power of emotion. You can censor data, but not memory. By the third day of the blackout, international media began noticing. Reuters confirmed arrests. BBC verified shootings. Al Jazeera published satellite images of the protests. Even Amnesty International released a statement demanding investigations into unlawful use of force. And yet, in the middle of all this noise, something deeper was happening, something psychological. Tanzania's youth were realizing they didn't need to be seen by the world to exist. They only needed to see each other. In cafes, in dorm rooms, on rooftops, they'd gather, talk, plan. They'd paint murals on walls, spray slogans in Swahili that said, "Tunaona hata gizani," we can see even in darkness. And isn't that the most poetic defiance you've ever heard? Because that's what this movement became, a test of vision in the dark. It wasn't about who could scream the loudest, it was about who could still whisper when everything went silent. And the whispers became a storm. The blackout that was meant to break the movement became its myth. Because now, Tanzanian youth had a story that no government could ever reclaim. The night they tried to silence us, and we spoke louder without speaking at all. But as this information war raged on, one truth became clearer than ever. This wasn't just a Tanzanian issue anymore. Because when you have a generation learning how to fight silence itself, you're not just looking at rebellion, you're looking at evolution. And that raises the next inevitable question. If this generation has already mastered how to resist, what happens when it starts learning how to rebuild? Sometimes history doesn't knock. It just walks in quietly, sits down, and says, "I'm here." That's what's happening in Africa right now, and Tanzania is the first drumbeat in that rhythm. Because you see, what's happening there isn't just a protest. It's not chaos. It's creation. A painful, messy, magnificent kind of creation. Africa's youth are writing a new song, and it doesn't sound like the anthems we grew up hearing. It's raw, unpredictable, and, beautifully disobedient. When Tanzanian youth took to the streets, they didn't just shake their own country. They shook something deeper, something continental. Because across the border, in Kenya, in Uganda, in Rwanda, in Ghana, in Senegal, young people are watching, and they're nodding. They're saying that's exactly how we feel. It's like, for the first time, Africa's youth are starting to speak in harmony. Not because they planned it, but because they lived the same pain long enough to recognize the same beat. The beat of being ignored. The beat of being unemployed with degrees in your hand. The best part of watching leaders grow richer as you grow older. And finally, the beat of saying, "No more." This is like a fire. And when that fire spreads, from one border to another, from one heart to another, the world will finally understand. Africa was never sleeping. It was just tuning its instruments. Now the music has started. And this time, no one's stopping the song. Do you really think silence can still control a generation that's already learned to speak without permission? Let us know in the comments section what happens when Africa's youth stop asking for change and start becoming it. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.